You ready to go?
Oh, I feel like I'm not happy with Fitz and his first chapter, baby. Like, swing and a miss.
You're not ready to talk about it.
No, because I'm like, I don't want to not like. Well, I like Fitz still. I'm sad for Fitz and also his bad choices. Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Emma.
And I'm Luke.
And we are starting a new trilogy. Woo!
Yes, not just a new book, a new trilogy.
Yes. And we're back with Fitz. Let's go.
Starting the Tawny Man trilogy, this is Fool's Errand, Chapter 1 episode. But before we get into the chapter itself, we just got to give a couple details about the book. It was published in 2001. And the Tawny Man trilogy, I looked at the publication dates, were all published back to back, year after year. And that was her whole thing from 1995 when Assassin's Apprentice was published. She published one book a year. So it's been 6 years since she first started publishing, and then this is the 6th book. So she continues that, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is an insane schedule to me.
Yeah.
But also, here we are following in her footsteps. Year 5, going into book 6.
Book 6, yeah.
Well.
I mean, we're a little bit behind her pace, actually.
Okay, so we're doing fine.
Yeah, exactly. We get to catch up later when she has a couple year breaks in between. So.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. But yeah, this is Fool's Errand.
And we are starting with chapter 1, which is titled Chade, Fallstar. Also, before we get back into this series, just a little reminder, since it's been a while, that we're going to pronounce the names probably wrong, depending on your opinion. And
right.
I just bring that up now because it has been a while. And I feel like last book wasn't as bad, but for some reason it's the Burek that people don't like because, like Luke, a lot of people like to pronounce it Burich.
I, in my head, originally said Burich.
Okay.
And
Burich.
I think it's actually in between both of what we say. Robin Hobb, I think, intended to be Burek.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter. We're going to say Burek.
Yeah. Sorry. I made him say it my way.
That hard U. Burek.
So,
and then the other one is Chade. In the books, it's very strongly hinted that it is pretty much a homonym or a homophone for shade.
yes.
But we say Chade, one, because it sounds
looks like.
better as you're listening to it, so we can differentiate between the two, but also because that's just how we started saying it.
Yes. So, yeah, I thought I would just apologize, I guess, in advance. I guess. I don't feel that I've done anything wrong. I'm sorry you feel that way. Non-apology. No, I just wanted to start that off so that we don't have to re-argue about it.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah.
I'm not changing it. I'm sorry.
Like Emma mentioned, that we both have separate readings of the names when we were coming into this, so we kind of had to agree on what to say about what name. So that'll probably happen for new characters in the future as well.
Yes. But we're going to start chapter 1, and we are back with Fitz. And it is late spring, and he is 35.
Yes, about 15 years have passed. Again, there's at the end of Assassin's Quest, there's a lot of discussion between fans of what age he actually is. The consensus is it's about 20, maybe 19-ish, because he doesn't really know his own age.
And we don't know when his birthday is.
Exactly. But I've also seen evidence from a fan, textual evidence, that said that there's not actual proof that has happened, and he might be 16 or 17, which I doubt. But we don't really know. He's about 35, and it's about 15 years.
Yes. Yeah.
He definitively says he's 35, though.
Yes, he definitively says that it is late spring. He is currently 35. Also, later in the chapter, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. He talks about how Hap, Nettle, and Dutiful are all 14, which does give us the time frame of the 15 years that it's been since we last were with him. So
exactly.
I only bring this up because I feel like we're always wondering about ages and numbers and what that looks like and how we tell. And whenever we get definitive answers, I get really excited. So, I just wanted to set the stage. Yeah. And we have a way to keep track now, at least for this trilogy.
Before we dive in, I do want to quick bring up the title character as well, Chade Fallstar. How old is he?
I don't know.
Because we don't ever get a definitive answer. I think he dies when he's about 100 and close to 120, maybe-ish.
Okay.
110, something like that. So kind of working backwards, that's 30 years into the future. He's got to be 80 close to right now.
Okay, sure.
Ish?
I'd say mid-70s to early 80s is fine to me.
When I was reading the chapter, I'm like, he's probably like just 70. And then I was thinking back of like when he dies and how far ahead in the future that is. I'm like, oh man, he's much older than I thought.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I would say anywhere in the 70 to 80 range, and you'd be accurate.
Right. So I also forgot to mention, I forget that this trilogy, the Fitz trilogies have this, but there is an intro.
Yeah, an epigraph to it.
Yes. And this one's really short, and it's a riddle that says, is time the wheel that turns or the track it leaves behind? And that is Kelstar's riddle.
Yes. Not much of a riddle, in my opinion. Just more like a question.
Well, it is a riddle because what is the answer? You could argue many ways.
Is it the chicken or the egg?
Exactly. But we are with Fitz, 35-year-old Fitz, who's lamenting about his age and how his younger self, his 20-year-old self, would think that he was decrepit and old. And now that he's there, he views himself as more at an in-between spot where he's not young enough to blame any poor decisions on the folly of youth, but he's not old enough to get away with having eccentric personality or doing whatever he wants and saying, well, I'm old. So he views this as sort of like a waiting period. And
most people call that being an adult, Fitz.
Yes. But you know what? I feel like that's a really good capture of a moment in time, right? When you start realizing that you're not quite young anymore, but you're also not really old either. Mm-hmm. And yeah, although I guess I don't think anybody ever really feels like they're an old person. So I think the age that old is keeps getting further and further away the older you get. So we have Fitz lamenting in that, and he's trying to take comfort in the small sounds around him because he sometimes can, with the fire crackling and Nighteyes breathing. And speaking of Nighteyes, we get to have a touch on him. Fitz sort of touches his mind to see what he's dreaming of. And Nighteyes is dreaming of hunting with a pack in the snow. And Fitz sort of leaves that dream. And I thought that was a really interesting insight into Nighteyes for the first time that we've seen him in over a book trilogy.
Right.
And it seems as though, to me, in my reading, that Nighteyes is still feeling a little sad about the loss of himself as fully wolf. And I think that sort of plays out a little bit more throughout this chapter and also mimics Fitz's feeling of loneliness in a way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if he's incredibly sad about it, but I think there is that life that he could have had, right?
Yeah.
The same one that Fitz dreams about and thinks about, the life that he could have had. And not that they're not content where they are right now, but that there could have been something different. And, there's dreams about it sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And as Fitz is here laying in bed, musing all of this, we're getting little glimpses into this part of his new life, right? When we left him, he was in the forest where the carving of Verity as dragon was? Or no, he was left off by Girl on Dragon somewhere. They took him somewhere, right?
He got dropped down. He got left in the mountains.
Okay.
Fitz and Nighteyes. Yeah. They were just going to spend some time walking around.
Right.
And they adventured for a little bit. They went to spend a year with Black Rolf.
Mm-hmm.
They wandered the cursed shore and then went back to Forge.
Right. But we don't know any of that yet. We just know as readers coming in,
Mm-hmm.
the last time we saw him, he was in the mountains.
Yes.
And now he is in a cabin. And it's obviously a place that he's been for a while. He talks about how there are 4 birch trees outside of his window that give him nice shade in the summer. And those were just twigs when he planted them, and now they're trees. So not only is this his home, clearly, it's his home that he has tended to and built and grown with
Right.
throughout the years.
Yeah. During the first trilogy, we get the epilogue and the prologue talking about his boy a couple
Yes.
times, and now we get his boy named
Yes.
Hap, who has gone off gallivanting with Starling almost 3 weeks ago and still had not returned. I could not blame him. My quiet recluse life was beginning to chafe his young shoulders. So there we learned that Starling still visits him a few times a year, and this time his boy has gone off with him.
Yeah. It's really interesting to get into this book from the previous trilogy, because I think the previous trilogy is written in third person.
Yes.
And although it's still giving you perspective into those characters' point of view and what they're directly thinking, it is still a sort of third person going on. And now we're getting back into the first person, and it's just Fitz, and we're not getting anybody else. And I think it's a really interesting, like, almost jarring feeling coming from the other book to now we're hearing like my boy and my feelings, and this is all Fitz's monologue. It's all his head.
It's so cozy to me. I don't know. Fitz books are just comfort to me.
Yeah,
We're back
that's
with
fair.
our sad little emo boy who's no longer a boy.
He is no longer a boy, but he is sad.
Yeah. And Hap has gone off to Buckkeep for Springfest.
Yeah, because he wanted to experience it, and Fitz wanted him to experience it. He thinks that it's sort of the right age for him to go off and eat the kerosene top cakes and watch a puppet show and maybe even kiss a girl. So
Yeah.
it's definitely nice to see that he does care about Hap, and he does want Hap to experience things and have a good life.
Mm-hmm. He also tries to convince himself that it's time that Hap found an apprenticeship somewhere with a carpenter or a joiner, because he showed a knack for such things, for like woodworking. But he was not ready to let Hap go just yet. He says, "For now, I would enjoy a month of peace and solitude and recall how to do things for myself. Nighteyes and I had each other for company. What more could we need?" And then he says, no sooner than the boy had gone, that it seemed way too quiet there.
Yes. And so I think this is really important, because something that I remember about reading these books, and like a theme that I sort of remembered coming through, is this whole Fitz being a bad dad, which I think we touched on when we were talking about this trilogy from the last series, and how, like, I mean, to Nettle and to Dutiful, he's not the greatest dad, right? And then also to
he was
Hap,
never really there for Dutiful anyways.
yes. And then also to Hap, he's not always making great decisions. But
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately Fitz does care about each of the children,
Yeah.
and even Hap. He just doesn't know how to love people in a healthy way, and he's really trying his best. And I think this is a really good example of that, because we have Fitz sort of pushing Hap away in his mind, almost not in person, not to Hap. Hap probably doesn't know what's happening, but in his mind, he's doing that distancing of, well, he needs to be sent away, and I don't really need him anyway. It's not that bad. But also being able to acknowledge, actually, it's really quiet without him, and I'm not really ready to let him go.
See, I don't think that's I don't think that's a bad parenting trait or anything from Fitz. I think that's just a way of preparing himself because that is the normal thing in this world, right? You send your kids away to learn a trade
Sure.
unless you are a skilled worker yourself.
Sorry, maybe I miscommunicated and blended two thoughts together. We have been talking about how he is a bad father, and I want to watch out for that. And something that I think can make it seem like he's a bad father is his ability to push others away and
Yeah.
also to be uninvolved in all three of his children's lives.
Yeah.
But I think that stems from, in this instance at least, where we have the first glimpse of that, the first glimpse of him trying to push somebody away. I think that that is not necessarily him being a bad father yet.
Oh,
That
okay.
is more like maybe these little things are building up to give me personally that impression.
Sure.
I don't think I communicated that properly. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah. So, yeah, he's just kind of mentally preparing himself, just like, any kind of guardian would, I
Yeah.
think.
But I think it's something we should watch out for as we go and just see sort of how that continues to build.
He says that when Hap is away, everything is too quiet and memories start coming back when things are too quiet, that he would rather have drowned and forgotten. Perhaps it was those memories that birthed dreams too vivid to ignore. Twice I had awakened sweating and shaking with my muscles clenched. I had enjoyed years of respite from such unquiet, but in the past 4 years my old fixation had returned. Of late, it came and went with no pattern I could discern. It was almost as if the old skill magic had suddenly recalled me and was reaching to drag me out of my peace and solitude. So now he talks about his skill hunger
Yes.
and how he was fine without it for 11 years, apparently.
Right. I want to talk about that 4-year period,
Yeah.
this past 4-year period. Do you have any idea of what his resurgence of call to the skill might be about?
I have some thoughts that it's related to the Live Ship trilogy, but I don't have any definitive guesses.
I have 3 thoughts. Well, I guess more like 2, 1.5, 2. But I think part of it could be, like you said, part of the Live Ship trilogy that we just got done reading, where there was either the hatching or the cocooning of the dragons. I feel like something about that could have sent a lot of skill. And not only that, but when we had Tintaglia flying around looking for serpents and questing out, I feel like that could spark skill in a way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I do. I just like the only thing with that is I don't know the overlap between the two stories. And I feel like 4 years ago is a little bit too long.
That's fair.
So I'm not sure.
My other thought was that this could also be something to do with the failing of the Live Ship trilogy. So hear me out. This is a tinfoil hat theory. What if Fool was meant to go down to the Rainwild Rivers to restart the dragon legacy? He followed that, Beloved followed that train to Bingtown and did all that stuff there and was successful in a way because a new breed of dragons was found and has hatched and is going, like, all that's happening. However, there's not enough. They're not strong. They don't have the memories. It's not correct. And so maybe the skill did forget about him because he wasn't
needed anymore.
Yeah, he wasn't the capital C catalyst anymore. But now some of the things have changed, the ripples have happened, and he's back to being a capital C catalyst and is needed again. And so because of that, the skill is more strongly eating at him because his path has been taken on a new way, not of his own doing, just of other things happening. But for those things to work, or for his paths to work, he needs the skill. And so the skill is coming back. That's kind of a crazy theory. I don't even know if I put much weight on it, but
Yeah.
that's just a thought that I had that it could be related to that.
Yeah, because that relies so much on believing that the skill or fate or something is striving to be set on a certain path. And so it like finds its champion or its catalyst to like make changes. And I don't know if I believe that kind of thing either.
Okay.
So, but the other thought I just had while you were talking as well is what's happening in the background is Illustor, the pale woman, is working on Eslevjal still
Yeah.
and forging people and creating their own dragons and stuff like that. So there could be a lot more skill being released into the world as a beacon of some sort. So I don't know.
Sure. It also could be his kids going through skill.
Yeah, true.
I mean, they're
It would be 10 at that point or something.
which is kind of the age of the start of puberty sometimes. Like it's really early, but it's not necessarily too early. And we don't really know when skill manifests. I know that Fitz was pretty young when some of it started sort of being clear that he had skill, not just the wit.
Right.
And so potentially unknowingly, his children are reaching for him and that's awakening that need to skill.
Yeah, could be.
So yeah, just a thought.
I think I like that one more than all the other ones that we've talked about,
Yeah, that's
to be fair. But yes, the skill hunger comes to him, returning back to the chapter here, and it's happened for the past 4 years or so, and it gets incredibly terrible. And he talks more about this addiction and this skill hunger, how there are sometimes no more than a few nights of yearning and then it disappears, or sometimes it just like eats away at him.
Right.
If the boy had been home, I could have probably shaken off the skill's persistent plucking at me, but he was gone, and so yesterday evening I had given in to the unvanquished addiction of such dreams stirred. I had walked down to the sea cliffs, sat on the bench my boy had made for me, and stretched out my magic over the waves. The wolf had sat beside me for a time, his look one of ancient rebuke. I tried to ignore him. No worse than your penchant for bothering porcupines, I pointed out to him. Save that their quills can be pulled out. What stabs you only goes deeper and festers. His deep eyes glanced past mine as he shared his pointed thoughts. Why don't you go hunt a rabbit? You've sent the boy and his bow away. You could run it down yourself, you know. Time was when you did that. Time was when you went with me to hunt. Why don't we go and do that instead of this fruitless seeking? When will you accept that there is no one out there who can hear you? And Fitz replies, I have to try.
Yeah. And what's interesting is Nighteyes doesn't quite understand this. He asks, why? Is my companionship not enough for you? And of course, that's not why. And Fitz lets him know, it is enough for me. You are always enough for me. I opened myself wider to the wit bond we shared and tried to let him feel how the skill tugged at me. It is the magic that wants more, not me. Take it away. I do not want to see that. And then I close that part of myself to him. So I wanted to specifically point that part of the interaction out because I found it kind of sad. And I wanted to bring it back to my earlier point of Nighteyes. First of all, about Nighteyes kind of missing the fact that he has left the fullness of being a wolf. He is not a wolf any more than Fitz is fully human.
Right.
And so that's something that Nighteyes, I guess, talks about often, about how he sometimes wishes he could have just been a wolf. And with that dream at the beginning, there's that longing for a different life. Maybe not over the life he currently has, but a longing nonetheless. And I think here is a little bit of that friction of, why would you seek somebody else out? You have me. Because Fitz is all Nighteyes has. There's not really another wolf that we know of or that he knows of out there who can understand what he's going through. And so here we have Nighteyes sort of having that jealousy, but also something that I found really poignant was that Nighteyes doesn't want to see this awful part of Fitz. It's like a portion of Fitz that Nighteyes doesn't understand and doesn't accept even. And that was really sad to me because I feel like I always think of Nighteyes as this companion that accepts Fitz as who he is, and beloved, definitely. But it just like felt really sad to me to know that they only have each other and there are parts of each other that they have to shut off from each other. I feel like I'm saying each other too much. But
I mean, that's healthy too, though, right?
well, for sure.
And that's something that they went through in the first trilogy of that there are barriers. Nighteyes kind of leaped into it like, no, there should be no barriers. And then Fitz is like, no, barriers.
Yeah.
Me and Molly, barriers.
Yeah.
And then they went on the journey and Nighteyes is like, I'm going to go run for these wolves. Barriers for me too.
Yeah.
So like, I think they found their balance in the relationship, even if it is too close, as Black Rolf says.
Right.
That they need some of those separate parts. And I think the skill is just too much of a human to human connection than Nighteyes even cares for. Like, I think he accepts that part of Fitz in my reading of it. I just don't think he needs to hear about it or wants to hear about it.
Okay, yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Maybe,
and it presents a danger to Fitz all the time.
That's true. Yeah, I think that's a much more generous reading of the whole thing, so I like it more. I think I was just thinking about it from the standpoint of like, to me, Fitz always feels so alone,
right.
And like he's just not enough. There's always something that somebody finds fault with, and it's just not right. And it just always really makes me sad that he never gets that full acceptance. And so maybe that's why I came at it looking at it like even his closest confidant and best friend, there are parts of him that person can't accept. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's more just a boundary and something that he doesn't, it's too human.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
But it is dangerous because Fitz then goes into how, winters past, he had collapsed multiple times, and the boy had helped him when Nighteyes was there. The boy had helped him get into the cabin again, but Nighteyes is going to stay by Fitz's side as he sits in this bench because he's scared for him.
Right.
He doesn't want Fitz to collapse from weakness and not be able to stand and get back to the cabin.
Right, because as we know, Fitz was never really trained in the skill.
Yeah.
So there is that sort of problem of he doesn't really know what he's doing. He knows a little bit, but he's not properly trained, and so he does overexert himself often, and apparently often enough where Nighteyes is worried. And Nighteyes does stop him, and he listens, and there's sort of an ache that happens at first from the pain in his head from skilling, but then secondly, he has the ache of longing to skill again.
Right.
So it's sort of a double-edged sword for Fitz here that when he indulges in this thing, it hurts him physically and mentally. It doesn't, even indulging to get rid of the pain of wanting to do it does not help. It just makes it worse.
And this is what Verity was going through as well in the first trilogy.
Yeah. In some ways, because he doesn't have a head injury that makes it so that it physically hurts to skill.
True. But he was starving himself because he had to do it constantly too.
Yes. Yeah. And it's addictive.
Yeah. So Fitz, is looking for that human connection and brushes up against some people, and he feels all of these thoughts and knows what these people are going through on this boat that he finds, but he says it still is not the same as true skilling, and it could not compare to that moment of completion when minds joined and one sensed the wholeness of the world as a great entity in which one's own body was no more than a mote of dust. And then Nighteyes kind of rouses him from this, like, hey, you've done this long enough. We need to go back.
Right.
So Fitz has been at this for a little bit, and he's doing it, and still in his mind, even though he's succumbing to this addiction and this want, it's still in his mind not enough. It's not that completion. It's not that like-minded person, that completion that he had with Verity.
Right.
At all.
And it is really hard. I think this is such an interesting magic that there is that addiction element to it. But I do wonder if part of this is exacerbated by the fact that Fitz has isolated himself from the world. And so, I mean, when you look at what he's reaching out and skilling and doing with that skill, he's touching the lives and minds of just random people and just sensing that the world is bigger than what he's made it out to be these last few years. And so I think that's really sad. And it makes me wonder, would it be this bad? Would it be this hard if he didn't close himself off so much? Like if he lived in a city and had neighbors who regularly checked on him that he was friends with and he moved on with a new woman, like would it be this bad? Or is this sort of a problem that is made worse by his own choices?
We also have to remember that he is partially forged, too, with his best memories of his childhood.
Yes.
Of his mother, specifically, being trapped away in Girl on a Dragon. So he really does not feel that joy in a lot of things anymore. And I think that sense of connection, the first connection that you have with somebody, is now out of his memory.
Yeah.
So it's hard for him to make those lasting relationships.
Yeah.
So he rises up after Nighteyes rouses him, and at first there is blackness at the edges of his vision, and blackness of spirit, of course, comes in its wake. I followed the wolf back through the gathering dark beneath the dripping trees, back to where my fire had burned low in the hearth, and the candles guttered on the table. I made myself elf bark tea, black and bitter, knowing it would only make my spirit more desolate, but knowing also that it would appease my aching head. Then he burns away that energy that elf bark brings by writing on some scrolls, particularly about the stone game.
Yes.
That he had tried before, and he'll probably throw this one away too, but at least he's accompanying it with illustrations this time, so it's not just a blob of words.
Yes, and this is the stone game that Kettle taught him at the end of the last Fitz trilogy, where it's supposed to be helpful for skill users to learn how to sort of rein in the skill.
Yes. Distract your mind and discipline it.
Yes. And while he does that, he basically stays up all night writing and goes to bed, he says, more early than late because it's so early in the morning the next day. And when he finally wakes up, half the day is already gone.
Half the morning,
half
at least
the morning,
he says.
I guess.
So
whatever.
It's probably like 10 or something like that.
And there's a long laundry list of things that needs to get done. He needs to, do chores around his cabin. He needs to take care of his chickens that he has. He needs to tend to the garden. And Nighteyes wants him to fish. And he
wants to make more purple ink, so he has to gather herbs for that. And wood to split.
I thought, especially because he's sort of trying out different ink recipes, it made me think of Patience, and I was like, he's Patience's child for sure. Having some weird side project. But there's all these things that have to get done, including Nighteyes' wish of, let's go check the salmon run, or the fish run. We don't know that they're salmon. Let's see if the fish are there yet, the new fish.
And Fitz is like, last year you nearly died from eating rotten fish. All the more reason to go now while they are fresh and jumping. You could use the boy's spear. And Fitz eventually just rolls over. He's like, I could be lazy one morning. It's fine.
He's like, so I'd be lazy one morning. Who would know? The chickens? The Nighteyes? Nobody's going to know or care. I'm sleeping in.
It seemed but moments later that his thoughts nudged me. My brother, awake. A strange horse comes. I was instantly alert. The slant of light in my window told me that hours had passed. I rose, dragged a robe over my head, belted it, and thrust my feet into my summer shoes. They were little more than leather soles with a few straps to keep them on my feet. I pushed my hair back from my face. I rubbed my sandy eyes. Go see who it is, I bade Nighteyes. See for yourself, he's nearly to the door. And this is where we learn some of the visitors that has seen Fitz over the past few years. Starling comes 3 or 4 times a year, and then he has a neighbor Baylor who has his cot and hogs in the next vale, but he did not own a horse, so he comes walking up, but it's obviously not Baylor because there's a horse coming down the road. And then a tinker came by twice a year because he had sheltered with Fitz on accident one time, and then had marked a little sign that said that there was a homely and hospitable hut down this road. So he gets a couple other stragglers once in a while, but nothing regular. So he doesn't really know who this could be.
And the sign of the hospitality from the tinker is a curled up cat, which I thought was a fun little detail.
So Fitz thinks that this caller is probably a lost traveler or a road-weary trader. I told myself a guest might be a pleasant distraction, but the thought was less than convincing. There's small sounds of man dismounting outside, and Nighteyes says, "The Grey One." My heart near stopped in my chest. I opened the door slowly as the old man was reaching to knock at it. He peered at me, and then his smile broke forth. "Fitz, my boy! Ah, Fitz!" He reached to embrace me. For an instant I stood frozen, unable to move. I did not know what I felt. That my old mentor had tracked me down after all these years was frightening. There would be a reason, something more than simply seeing me again. But I also felt that leap of kinship, that sudden stirring of interest that Chade always roused in me. When I had been a boy at Buckkeep, his secret summons would come to me at night, bidding me climb the concealed stair to his lair in the tower above my room. There he mixed his poisons and taught me the assassin's trade and made me irrevocably his. Always my heart had beaten faster at the opening of that secret door. Despite all the years and the pain, he still affected me that way. Secrets and the promise of adventure clung to him. So I found myself reaching out to grasp his stooping shoulders and pull him to me in a hug. And then Fitz remarks that he was getting skinny again from his out and about in the world, and that Fitz had become the old recluse in a worn wool robe.
Yes. And not only is there a change in the demeanor in Chade, or I guess the look of him, but it's also the clothes are not just better, but resplendent. He's wearing really nice fabrics. He has fur. He is wearing emerald earrings and a necklace with emeralds in it. He is clearly doing very well for himself.
Yes. The old assassin smiled mockingly as he saw me take in his splendor. Ah, but a queen's counselor must look the part if he is to get respect both he and she deserve in his dealings. I see, I said faintly, and then finding my tongue, "Come in, do come in. I fear you will find my home a bit ruder than you would have obviously become accustomed to, but you are welcome all the same." "I did not come to quibble about your house, boy. I came to see you." "Boy?" I asked him quietly as I smiled and showed him in. And then Chade does the thing, "Oh, well, to me, you're always going to be a boy."
Right. The parent thing of you've never grown. It doesn't matter that you're 35. You're a boy.
You're my baby boy. You know?
My boy!
Says, "You have the wolf still, I see. Nighteyes, was it? Up in years a bit now. I don't recall that white on your muzzle. Come here now, there's a good fellow. Fitz, would you mind seeing to my horse? I've been all morning in the saddle and spent last night at a perfectly wretched inn." And he says, "I'll bring in my saddlebags as well." And Fitz immediately just goes about his business, doing what he's told, and he kind of chuckles to himself at that.
Yeah, about the fact that they're falling back into this routine of Chade telling him what to do and Fitz listening. And he enjoys it. He enjoys putting the horse away and cleaning the horse. It's a really nice horse.
Yes.
Well-bred. And he's excited. He talks about how it's nice to handle such a fine horse again, which, you know, is probably bringing up memories from his time with Burek in the stables. And
right.
Once he's done taking care of the horse, making sure it's fed and put away, he takes in the saddlebags, which are sloshing with a hopeful sound to Fitz.
Promisingly. I do want to remark quick that Nighteyes also aged 15 years. That is an important part of this trilogy, unfortunately.
Yes.
But
spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. But he is a character that always sounds the same to me. And since we don't get his perspective, we don't hear how he's getting older or anything like that until, you know, he starts choking on that fish bone and Fitz heals him and he's even worse for wear than he was before.
Right.
I think that's coming up in this book and a few chapters here. But Nighteyes is also about 17 now.
Yeah, that's sad to think about because I don't know. I don't know the normal lifespan of a wolf, but we do know that animal companions live longer than their normal lifespan as part of the bond with their humans.
Yeah, but not too much longer.
No, but they do live longer. It's like a thing. So I don't know if he's just like regular old for a wolf right now.
In captivity, wolves can live longer, sometimes reaching 15 or even 20 years. But in the wild, it's usually 5 to 7.
Interesting. Okay, so he's like...
He's old.
Old.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, and he's had a rough life, lots of injuries, things like that.
True. Well,
Although he's been a lazy dog for the last few years here, with the boy to do all of his hunting.
true.
So Fitz enters the house again to find Chade looking at Fitz's writings, particularly the stone game treatise that he was writing the night before. And Chade says, "This is fascinating. I'd like to have this one when you have finished with it." After he says, "This is the one that Kettle taught you, helping to focus your mind away from the skill road." So Fitz is like, "Yeah, you can have that." But in his mind, he's like, "Don't say those words. Don't bring up those memories."
Don't bring up Kettle. Don't bring up the skill road. I don't want to think about that. And again, we see for, I think, the second time, Fitz talking about blaming the memories for making him discontent in his life.
Right.
It's this, if I wouldn't have thought about everything that happened to me, I would be fine here and I wouldn't care. But since Starling kept talking about Springfest and all these things that sparked memories for me, that's what's made it uncomfortable to be here alone without Hap. And since we have Chade here talking about Kettle and the skill road, that's uncomfortable. That's going to make me discontent. It's not anything else. It's the memories being forced upon me.
So he wants to push it into the past, and then he also says to Chade out loud, "It's not Fitz, it's Tom Badgerlock." So he wants to push his name into the past as well.
Exactly. And really funny to me is Chade's reaction to this, because, Fitz is like, "It's actually Tom Badgerlock now." And Chade goes, "Oh.
Well, it makes sense, and it's sensible." And then he just kind of ignores it from then on.
And then continues to call him Fitz. I just think it's really funny of this sort of like, okay, not your name, but sure. What a weird alias. Anyway, Fitz.
Chade says that there is brandy in those bags if you've cups for us, and some of old Sarah's ginger cakes. I doubt you'd expect me to remember how fond you were of those. Probably a bit squashed, but it's the taste that matters with those. The wolf had already sat up. He came to place his nose on the edge of the table. It pointed directly at the bags. Fitz asks about Sarah, and Chade's like, "Well, she doesn't mainly cook. She just cooks what she wants now. She still sits in the kitchen, but there's a younger guy who does the day-to-day stuff." Oh, I see that it's Nighteyes' favorites too, because Nighteyes is slobbering all over and tosses him a cake.
Yeah. And the younger man in charge of the kitchens is Duff now.
Yes, Duff.
But Fitz finds some cups, which he's now suddenly a little bit embarrassed that there's chips in the crockery.
Right.
He wants to give a nice cup to Chade, but he must have found some, because he pours himself and Chade some
Sandsedge brandy.
Some
good apricot brandy.
Is this the apricot brandy? I thought the apricot brandy is specifically what comes from the Rainwilds from the Fool later.
Oh, maybe? But I thought it was Sandsedge that was the apricot. I could be wrong.
Because, I think specifically the Fool brings an apricot brandy that's special.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sandsedge is just the good brandy of the Six Setchies, plain brandy. The saddlebags gave up their other treasures quickly. A sheaf of fine paper, pots of blue, red, and green inks, a fat ginger root just starting to sprout, ready to be potted for the summer, some packets of spices, a rare luxury for me, a round ripe cheese, and in a little wooden chest other items, hauntingly strange in their familiarity, small things I had thought long lost to me. A ring that had belonged to Prince Rurisk of the Mountain Kingdom, the arrowhead that had pierced the prince's chest and nearly been the death of him, a small carved box made by my hands years ago to contain my poisons. I opened it. It was empty. He was not just the old man come to visit me. He brought it all of my past trailing along behind him as an embroidered train follows a woman into a hall. When I let him into my door, I had let in my old world with him. So again, all these memories are being brought up, and he's like, Chade's bringing all this to the past. And then he asks him, why? Why did you seek me out? Why now? And Chade's like, well, I saw your boy with Starling. He doesn't look like you, but he has all of your mannerisms.
Not that he looks like you any more than Nettle looks like Burek, but he has your mannerisms, your way of holding back and looking at things with his head cocked just so before he decides whether he'll be drawn in. He puts me so much in mind of you at that age that you've seen Nettle, I cut in quietly. It was not a question. Of course, he replied as quietly. Would you like to know about her? And
good old Chade just dropping some names to
just
provoke
casually,
Fitz.
oh yeah, I saw your boy. Looks like your daughter, but whatever. And
But anyway, your boy.
yeah,
acts
going
so
back
much
to
like
the
you.
boy. And Fitz has to think, because does he want to know about Nettle? He feels really bad. It's very clear that he has a lot of guilt from leaving Nettle.
Yes, that he had unwillingly abandoned, as he calls it.
Yes. And he doesn't want to know more about her because that sort of opens a door that he would rather keep closed. And if he doesn't know about her, then it doesn't hurt as bad, is my theory. It's sort of this like pushing away of all the memories and everything. It doesn't hurt as bad if you don't think about it. And so if you don't know about your daughter, you can't think about all the ways that you're missing out on learning about your daughter.
But obviously he is interested in learning about her and takes a slug of brandy. And Chade knows him, so Fitz doesn't have to voice his interest in her or ask any questions. Chade just starts talking.
Mm-hmm.
She looks much like you in a skinny female way, but strange to tell, she resembles Beric even more. She has more of his mannerisms and habits of speech than any of his 5 sons. 5, I exclaimed in astonishment. 5 boys, and all as respectful and deferential to their father as any man could wish. Not at all like Nettle. She has mastered that black look of Beric's and gives it right back to him when he scowls at her, which is seldom. I won't say she's his favorite, but I think she wins more of his favor by standing up to him than all the boys do with their earnest respect. She has Beric's impatience and his keen sense of right and wrong, and all your stubbornness, but perhaps she learned that one from Beric as well. You saw Beric then? And Chade's like, yeah, I did. It'd be impossible to see Nettle without seeing Beric.
Yes. But isn't it so interesting to think about? I think this touches on a topic that I'm deeply fascinated by.
Yeah, you are.
And that's nature versus nurture. And obviously that's not what this is about, and we're not going to get into it. But I always find it really interesting to think about how much of a person is created by their genetics, like what mannerisms, what sort of like decisions they make, what of that is contributed by the genetics.
Socialization, or is that genetics?
Yeah, like the way you sneeze or itch your nose when you're angry. Is that something that you learned from watching your parents do that, or would you have done that even if you were adopted? And I don't know, I just find it really fascinating. And so having this here where it's like, oh, she's just like Beric, she's all this stuff and she's stubborn like you, but maybe that's also from Beric because you were also raised by Beric. And
it's something that fantasy books don't take the time to think about. One, fantasy books often don't span generations.
Yes.
Sometimes they do, but it's not often that they do, and then you take time to like talk about who they look like and their mannerisms.
Right. And we have an old spy here talking about how he can recognize those little things because he's been trained to look at details like that. And so it's interesting. We have Hap, the adopted son, who is just like Fitz.
Right.
And Nettle, the adopted daughter, who is just like Beric.
Mm-hmm. So Chade continues to talk about Beric, how he has gotten older and his limp has gotten worse, obviously. So remember, Beric was about Chivalry's age when Fitz was, he's about Chivalry's age. I will end it there.
Yeah.
And Fitz was about 6 when Chivalry was about 26-ish. So this is 30 years later, roughly. So Beric is 56-ish.
Right. And he's dealing with a horrible leg injury, so the limp. It makes sense that, he got hit by a boar, right?
Yep. Yeah, he got struck by a boar on a hunt with Chivalry.
Yes.
And then his leg never healed correctly after that.
So it makes sense that in his 50s, he's starting to limp a lot more now. And it's, sort of hurting him more. But it's clear that he's doing well for himself because he doesn't really have to walk all that much if he doesn't want to now. Chade tells us that just like Burek, it was always about the horses with him, and it still is.
Yes. You do know that the queen and I saw to it that both Ruddy's and Sudi's colts were given over to him? Well, he's founded his livelihood on those 2 stud horses. The mare you unsaddled, Ember, I got her from him. He trains as well as breeds horses now. He will never be a wealthy man, for the moment he has coin to spare, it goes for another horse or to buy more pasturage. But when I asked him how he did, he told me well enough. And what did Burek say of your visit? I asked. I was proud I could speak with an unchoked voice. Chade grinned again, but there was a rueful edge to it. After he got over the shock of seeing me, he was most courteous and welcoming, and as he walked me out of my house, out to my horse the next morning, which one of the twins, Nim, I think, had saddled for me, he quietly promised that he'd kill me before he brook any interference with Nettle. He spoke the words regretfully, but with great sincerity. I didn't doubt them from him, so I don't need them repeated from you. Which is really funny.
Yes.
Burek is as protective as he always was, even more so now after what Fitz went through.
Right. And I mean, I think it's cute and funny that Burek is regretful to threaten a friend. And I guess it's funny to think of him seeing Chade as an old friend. But either way, he is still going to threaten him and means it.
Yeah. And Chade can just laugh it off because he's that kind of guy.
Yeah. I think Chade knows it's a real threat, but I think Chade also knows that's not going to affect him in any way because he's the better of the 2 of them at that sort of thing. But you know what? It's cute that he wanted to try.
Fitz asks probably the most pressing question to him. Does she know Burek is not her father? Does she know anything of me? Question after question sprang to my mind. I thrust them away. I hated the avidity with which I had asked those 2, but I could not resist. It was like the skill addiction, this hunger to know, finally know these things after all the years. Chade says he doesn't know, but she calls him Papa. She loves him fiercely with absolutely no reservations. She disagrees with him, but is about things rather than about Burek himself. I'm afraid that with her mother, things are stormier. Nettle has no interest in bees or candles. Molly, of course, wants Nettle to follow in her own trade, and Nettle is more interested in things like, I don't know, castles, swords, horses.
Horses, hawks, and swords. And she wants to be part of the guard.
Mm-hmm. I expected at least some talk of young men from her, but she seems to have no use for them. And she would like to run away and join one of the guard companies, like you said. She knows Burek was stablemaster at Buckkeep once, and one of the reasons I went to see him was to make Kettrican's offer of that position again. Burek refused it, and Nettle cannot understand why. They both say that, well, we understand why he refuses.
Yes. And I really want to talk about this really quickly, back up a little into the fact that Molly is mentioned here. Fitz has not, in his own mind, thought about Molly at all, at least said her name. He is curious about Nettle. It's clear that he's curious about Nettle. And he had curiosity about Burek a little bit. I mean, he felt a little bit of pain about the guy that raised him, thinking he's dead, sort of that little bit of guilt there. But he didn't especially think of Burek until he was brought up. But Molly, even after she's brought up, completely ignored. Almost like
he's forged and he put those memories into the Girl and a Dragon.
I just thought that detail was really, really fascinating because we know that he did put those memories of Molly away and his anger at Burek for what happened with Molly, right? Because he was hurt that Burek and Molly got together. He understood it. He understood why it happened, but he also was really upset at that. Yeah. And so he didn't put all of his memories of Burek away, but he did put sort of those feelings about him away. And so it's interesting here to see that he was curious about Burek, but with Molly, it's almost as though she's just a random person. It's just, she gets the same amount of attention as the fact that Duff is the new guy who's leading the kitchen.
Yeah.
Like, it just is a name dropped in there, somebody who he vaguely knows that did a thing. And now we're back to the more important topic of who we actually care about.
Yeah, like you said, after the name is dropped, not a lot of time spent thinking about her at all.
Not even
Not even mentioned.
Yeah, not even a mention in his own mind of, oh, Molly.
She's just gone.
Just gone. And it's kind of sad, actually, when you think about it.
It's incredibly sad, yeah.
It's just like a weird... When I noticed that immediately, I had to reread that section because I was like, wait, nothing about like no reaction at all?
And then you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah. And so that, I don't know, I obviously...
Magical compartmentalization.
Yeah. I obviously like the two of them together, so it's sad because my ship is not interacting, but...
You get a great ending to this book, this trilogy,
but
though.
No, but it was just really sad to see, Molly not matter in this moment.
Yeah. Chade says that he offered Burek to bring Nettle to Buckkeep and have her be a page for him or to put her into Queen Kettrican's service, and Burek immediately refused and almost seemed offended, and Fitz breathes out a sigh of relief that he didn't know that he was holding. He didn't know he was holding his breath at that point, but he's like, good, she's going to stay away from Buckkeep. He knew my next question as well as I did. Why? Why did he seek out Burek? Why did he offer to take Nettle to Buckkeep? I took more of my own brandy and considered the old man. So then he thinks about Chade a little bit and then tries to make devious questions of his own and strikes wide of his mark.
Yes.
But one that would bring him closer to his true question of why is he going to all these people?
Which I will get into, but I do also want to point out that he's like, Chade is so old, but not old the way most old people are old. Because he is there is some curling to his shoulders, but he still has the vibrancy of life in his eyes. And
he's older than King Shrewd, and King Shrewd was dead all these years, but he's still vibrant. He's still going.
Which I thought was a weird detail because King Shrewd was poisoned and killed.
But we determined that he was also sick.
Yes.
He was actually sick too.
Yeah, for sure. But I just thought it was really weird for him to be like, he's way older than Shrewd was, and Shrewd's been dead a while. And it's like, well, he was also murdered, so I don't think that counts. It's not that weird that he's still doing fine. But there is this sort of, he's not that old really in spirit, and you can tell. But he is wondering sort of what Chade is doing to be so vibrant, to be alert and awake longer, and to keep the curl. Yeah, what drugs and what are their effects? And what is that doing to him? And sort of just musing over that. But like you said, he tries to cast a net and throws a spear wide away from what he wants and asks about patience. Except this makes me really frustrated because I just, as you know, a little bit ago talked about how I thought the way he lived reminded me of Patience, and I see that in him. It's like, Mom, whatever. And here he says, so, and how is Patience these days? I chose my question with care. News of my father's wife was well wide of what I wished to know, but I could use this answer to venture closer. First of all, that's your mother. Stop talking about her that way. Second of all, you don't care. Mother. Well, it's not okay. It's his adopted mother, but you don't care what's happening to Patience. It's so silly. Whatever. He cares what's happening to Patience. That's why he asked. That's all I have to say.
So Chade says, well, I haven't seen her for a little over a year. She's resides at Tradeford, She rules there and quite well. Odd when you think of it, because she avoided everything when she was with your father.
Yeah.
But
when she was actually queen,
she
didn't really rule. And then when she was widowed, she was fine to be an eccentric, weird lady.
And then the Civil War in the Six Duchies came, and she stepped up in Buckkeep, and Queen Kettrican then was very wise to send her away from Buckkeep because she wouldn't be able to live in Buckkeep without continuing in that role.
Yes.
So now she rules really well at Tradeford.
And then he asks, and Prince dutiful? And Chade responds, as like his father as he can be, Chade observed, shaking his head. I watched him closely, wondering how the old man intended that remark. How much did he know? He frowned as he continued. The queen needs to let him out a bit. The folks speak of dutiful as they did of your father, Chivalry. Correct to a fault, they say, and almost have the truth of it, I fear. So definitely Fitz is who he was talking about.
Probably, yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if I think Chade knows about this.
I don't think so. I don't think he does. I think Kettrikin slowly becomes aware of it over the years and is aware of it by the end of the series, obviously. But I don't think Chade ever knows.
Okay.
Fully.
I wonder if Fitz coming back helps her realize.
Possibly, yeah.
But I don't know. But I think it is really interesting to say he's like his father and then immediately be like, he's just like Chivalry, actually.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Chivalry and Verity are not the same.
No, they're not.
And so it's weird to be like, he's just like his father, but actually kind of just like Chivalry. And I don't know, two very different statements.
The people almost have the truth of it, that he is correct to a fault. And Fitz seizes on that and asks, and Chade gives him a smile that was almost apologetic and basically says there's some trouble with the boy. He's not himself. He's always been a solitary lad, but, it's made him introspective. But recently he's shifted to a darker temperament. He's distracted and moody, so caught up in his inner thoughts that he seems completely unaware of what is going on in the lives of those around him. He is not discourteous or uncaring, at least, not deliberately, but he's what, 14, I asked? He does not sound so different from Hap of late. I've been thinking much the same things about him, that I need to let him out a bit. It's time he got out and learned something new from someone other than myself. I think you are absolutely correct. Queen Kettrikin and I have reached the same decision about Prince Dutiful. His tone made me suspect I had just run my head into the snare. Oh? I said carefully. Oh, Chade mimicked me.
Yeah, Fitz is a little bit out of practice with this whole dealing with human beings thing.
Let me cast my net wide. Oh, right where Chade wants me to be, in the royal family. Oh, yes, you've no doubt guessed it. We would like to have you come back to Buckkeep and instruct the prince in the skill. And Nettle, too, if Beer can be persuaded to let her go and if she has any aptitude for it. So before we get into Fitz's answer to that, Chade's giving Fitz a little bit too much credit. He is out of practice. He doesn't guess that it's about the skill. He's just like, oh, they want me for something.
Yes. But I mean, at least he knew immediately, and he knew that Fitz would know that. So
yes. Yeah. That's true.
Better than underestimating him, I guess.
But I remember this whole trilogy. Isn't Chade the whole time being like, you need to buckle down and like get back to your old habits because you are not doing any of this correctly?
Kind of. I think a little bit, yes.
There's some admonishment on his side. Either get with the whole program or like go back to your life as Tom Badgerlock, one or the other.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Because when he does obviously go to the castle, he is really sloppy in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm sure that would make Chade upset.
Yeah.
But he's out of practice for like 15 years. But anyway, Fitz immediately says no without hesitating.
Because he knows that that's going to tempt him. And immediately after he says no, there's that surge of desire in him. Like, oh, I could, meet these people, meet my kids, but also be in the skill.
Right.
And that's the dangerous part for him.
Yes. But it is such a simple answer, right? He goes in, he's a teacher, he gets to learn about his kids, and he's just a guy to them. He's not their dad. He doesn't have to admit that he's their father.
He could correct wrong things that he did in the past because there are no skilled ones anymore because he hunted down and killed them. So he could train them correctly in this new generation. Look at the skill scrolls that Galen and Regal stole.
Yeah. And then also, he realizes, like you said, that it's more for him. The more exciting thought is that he gets to have connection in the skill, that he'll get that connection he's been yearning for and wanting, and get to train that up and train people the right way and then have that connection. And that's not a good reason to do this. And so even though the other things are noble and nice, he doesn't want to feed the addiction anymore.
And Fitz knows all of Chade's little social tricks. Chade just stays quiet after Fitz's denial, not asking any questions or any follow-up. And even though Fitz knows the trick, he can't help but try to defend his answer and speak up and say, I can't. All the reasons I should not. And Chade's like, not really. Why should Prince Dutiful be denied his birthright as a Farseer? Or Nettle? Birthright? It's more like a family disease, Chade. And then he tries to brush it off like, It devoured Verity. Like all of these bad things happen because of the skill. Sure, he saved the 6 duchies, but even if there had been no red ships to battle, Verity would eventually have gone to the mountains to carve a dragon. That place called to him. It is the ordained end for any skilled one.
Right. And he says it's this addiction that's too strong. And I want to talk about that and the different places that both of these characters are coming from. Because we have Fitz, who is coming from a place where he is still actively struggling with his skill addiction and with the negative side effects of using the skill.
Yes.
Which some of those are unknown to him as that are actually injuries that have occurred to him from a childhood. Like that's something
Skull
he
fractures.
doesn't. Yes. So he doesn't know about that, but he does know that like he has this addiction. He watched Verity struggle with addiction and ultimately end up using up his life force to create this dragon with skill, which is, according to the legends, what skill users are supposed to do. That's how they prove that they're good at the skill or whatever. And so he has this sort of idea that skill is this really, really bad thing. But Chade is a royal bastard who was denied being able to use the skill. And on top of that, he was around when there were normal skill users. In his childhood, there would have been skill users who were fully trained and not addicted. I mean, addicted in a way that you would be, I think, from touching this magic. But
they could handle it for their 200 years and then go to the mountains, you know?
Yes, for 200 years. They lived a long time. The way that the Farseers after Chade's generation are handling the skill isn't healthy or normal.
It's actually the generation before Chade's, because King Bounty, his father, is the one who stopped the instruction.
Okay.
So I think he would have known Solicity, the skill mistress, and maybe some of the other like hangers on, but wouldn't have seen any new ones be trained.
Right. But I think that is what that's why they're both coming at this from different places, is that Fitz thinks it has to be this evil thing that is an addiction and whatever. He just watched somebody use it incorrectly and too much. There was nobody else to help him with the burden. And now he himself is using it too much with no one to help him. And so, used that way, it's an evil, but it isn't. And Fitz refuses to see it as anything but the way that he knows it to be.
Well, and Chade is coming at it from like a geopolitical standpoint as well, right? He is the queen's advisor. He has to look at the safety of the realm, and the skill is the Farseer royal magic. That is the birthright of the Farseers as Chade claims it. This is something that represents what the royal line is, and if your kingdom does not have that magic anymore, it loses some legitimacy on the world stage. It loses some of that bargaining power. You lose some of that mystique around your lineage. So Chade is like, I need to protect the Farseers because we are the rulers of this place, and I need to lend that credibility and get any kind of edge we can get in any future dealings that we have, whether that is politically, whether that's in war, whether that's trade, anything. Chade he has always been, and we'll see further evidence of that in all the other books, he has always been searching for that advantage, no matter the cost to him or the people around him, as long as it benefits the direct family, royal family.
Right. And I think that part of this whole emphasis on it's the right of the royal family, or it's the gift of the royal family, is because he was denied that.
It does come down to that, yeah.
I think that really does influence him, but also because he hasn't really had any firsthand experience with skill in a meaningful way, he doesn't understand the danger. And I think he's a type of person who doesn't care about danger as long as the risk is less than the reward or whatever, however you say that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's part of it too. And we see that here because he tells Fitz, I actually don't agree with you that it's this dangerous thing. I've been reading the skill scrolls, and it actually says that it's more dangerous to allow young people who have the skill to just manifest it on their own, because they don't know what they're doing and they're going to manifest and they're going to start using it incorrectly. And that can be just as dangerous as all the stuff you're telling me is happening. So wouldn't it be better to train them a little?
Chade says that I fear and I think that Galen instilled a fear in you of using it as well.
Right. And not only that, but he taught you as little as he possibly could. So you don't even have a full grasp of what this is. But I have the scrolls, and the scrolls tell me that this is an amazing tool. It can do so much more than we thought.
Yeah, it can, like he talks about, be used in healing, not just to find out what's wrong, but actually encourage those wounds to heal. A strong, skilled one can see through another's eyes, hear what the other hears and feels. And so Chade's getting excited about this. Fitz has to cut him off. But Chade's like, there are so many uses that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
That would be beneficial.
Yes. And I find it really interesting. The thing that he gets cut off on is that whole, like, a very skilled user can use somebody else's eyes and ears, which is how Fitz was used by Verity.
Yeah.
That is something that happened to that Verity used on Fitz already. And that's something that definitely is a skill ability that Fitz is aware of. But Chade doesn't know what he is or isn't aware of. And I find Fitz's reaction really interesting to this. He cuts off Chade and then thinks about his reaction, because his knee-jerk reaction is to be mad that Chade would have read the scrolls at all, these skill scrolls, and then reminds himself that the queen probably gave them to Chade. There is no skill master.
Who else would read them?
Yeah, who else would read them, and why wouldn't he have? But I thought that was a really interesting reaction to have, of this, like, he can't read those. Why would he care?
But again, it goes to the line of that ability had died out. No, I had killed off one by one the last trained skill users. So once again, he has that knee-jerk reaction. He's mad, like, oh, Chade shouldn't be reading this. He has no right. Wait, I'm at fault for all of this. He's the only one who can, if the queen's going to give it to him. So it's my fault again. So it's a weird kind of circle of, like, I'm mad at you. No, I should be mad at myself.
Right.
Like, immediately. He's just into depression again.
Yeah, but also, I don't understand his anger. Like, the Chade shouldn't have read it. Why does it matter at all?
I think because he wants that knowledge so jealously for himself. I think it's just like
that
he covets
reaction.
It so deeply, of just like, I need more skill. Like, that addiction is hitting him so hard, like, no one else should have it. He's not trained. It's dangerous for him. But that, I think, is more surface to the underlying.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they say your knee-jerk reaction to something is, this is really funny based off what we've talked about earlier, but your knee-jerk reaction to something, the first thought you get in your head when something happens is the nurture or whatever. It's like the way that you have been trained to think, and then your secondary thoughts after, when you correct that thought or double down, whatever the case is, that is nature. And that's like what I don't know if that even makes it, but it's what you've decided. That's like how your personality coming through, and like your own personal morals are guiding what you've learned. And so I think it's really
would make sense with Galen teaching him that, like, skill is exclusive. You can't do it unless you've gone through all those things, and, you know.
And Chade didn't go through that, so he shouldn't touch it. And then to correct that and be like, okay, well, first of all, who cares? Second of all, it's my fault that nobody else could touch it that would be quote unquote deserving. And so I think that's a really interesting thing to have in here. But we do have Fitz responding saying, I'm not a skill master. Like you said, there are things I don't know. I don't know that I could teach them. And as you've probably read in those skill scrolls, the tea that you and I drank all the time and that we were giving to Verity
It's one of the
is-
worst things that you can do for the skill, drinking elf bark.
Yes, elf bark tea is really bad for skill. It kills it. And I've been drinking it since, knowing that. I've been drinking it this whole time. And sometimes I drink it 4 days in a row to try to get the skill to go away because the pain of wanting to use it is so bad. So I don't think I even have any skill left.
Or if I do, it's stunted beyond recall now.
Yes.
Even more erratic than it was.
Which Chade says he doesn't think that can be true if he's still having
Cravings.
cravings, but he will give him that he did not realize that's how bad the addiction is and how much Fitz has been suffering, that they all thought he was doing fine because he was staying out here in the middle of nowhere.
Chade's like, I'm truly sorry. We had no idea that you were suffering. I thought it would be like drink or smoke. If you leave it alone for a while, it would just go away after years, you know? And Fitz is like, no, it just lies dormant and then comes back with no reason or whatsoever that I can think of. And then he changes the subject because even talking about it just kind of like, as he says, pokes the boil and stirs up that craving once again.
Right. He asks Chade to speak of something else because the conversation ... pains me. And then Chade sits there for a moment and sort of thinks and says, of course we can. I told Ketcherkin that I doubted you'd fall in with our plan. He gave a brief sigh. I'll simply have to do the best I can with what I've gleaned from the scrolls. Now, I've had my say. What would you like to hear me talk about? And obviously this is sort of a last-ditch attempt by Chade to sort of get Fitz in, but Fitz takes it, hook, line, and sinker, and goes, what do you mean you're going to teach them? Like, what do you mean from what you gleaned? Like, you can't use it. That's so dangerous. You don't even know what you're doing.
Jade's like, you leave me no choice. Do you grasp the danger you'd be exposing him to? The skill draws a man, Chade. It pulls at his mind and heart like a lodestone. He will want to be one with it. If the prince yields to that attraction for even an instant while he's learning, he'll be gone. And there will be no skilled one to go after him, to pull him back together and drag him from the current. I could tell from the expression on Chade's face that he had no understanding of what I was telling him. He only replied stubbornly, what I read in the scrolls is that there is danger to leaving one with a strong skill talent completely untrained. In some cases, such youngsters have begun to skill almost instinctively, but with no concept of the danger or how to control it. I should think that even a little knowledge might be better than to leave the young prince in total ignorance. I opened my mouth to speak, then shut it again. I drew a deep breath and let it out slowly. I won't be drawn into it, Chade. I refuse. Years ago, I promised myself. I sat by Will and watched him die. I didn't kill him because I'd promised myself I was no longer an assassin and no longer a tool. I won't be manipulated and I won't be used. I've made enough sacrifices. I think I've earned this retirement. And if you and Ketcherkin disagree with that and no longer wish to provide me with coin, well, I can cope with that as well. So we get brought up a little backstory here that Starling, on one of her first visits, had left him a bag of coin, and he had been incredibly mad and tried to pay her back. And she's like, no, this isn't for like my services or anything.
This isn't for your services.
Or your services,
yes, specifically. So he thought Starling had paid him the money.
Yeah, this is because, this is your retirement fund, your pension. And Fitz is like, oh, Starling's with Chade. Got it.
Right. And ever since then, he realized anything Starling knows, Chade probably also knows.
Yes. She probably reported to him each time she returned to Buckkeep. I told myself it didn't bother me, but now I wondered if all those years of keeping track of me had been Chade waiting for me to be useful again. I think he read my face. Fitz, calm down. There's been no talk of anything like that. We are both well aware of not only what we owe you, but also what the whole Six Duchies owes you. As long as you live, the Six Duchies will provide for you. As for Prince Dutiful's training, put it out of your head. It's not truly your concern at all. Once again, I wondered uneasily how much he knew. Then I steeled myself. As you say, it's not truly my concern. All I can do is warn you to be cautious. Ah, Fitz, have you ever known me to be otherwise? His eyes smiled at me. So, Fitz is still toying with this in his head here. He still has that fear, of course, because Chade is inexperienced and that tutelage could actually destroy Prince Dutiful before he actually gets trained. But by far the biggest part of my desire to teach a new coterie was simply so that I could furnish myself with a way to satisfy my own craving. Having recognized that, there was no way I could in good conscience inflict this addiction on another generation. And Chade was as good as his word. He spoke no more of skilling.
I sort of feel like that's an excuse Fitz is using. Like, obviously, I'm not trying to downplay.
I think it's a good excuse.
It is a good excuse. I'm not trying to downplay the struggle he's having and the addiction he is going through. I don't want to belittle that. But I do think that Fitz is using that as a crutch to say, oh no, I couldn't possibly. Like, I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart to not allow this. Like, I couldn't do that to somebody else, so I can't be the teacher. But really what it is, I think, is that he doesn't want to see these people that he's known, like he doesn't, like,
Yeah.
I think it is a defense thing. I think he doesn't want to go open himself back up to that world and see what he's missed, because
I think he's also afraid of the skill too.
Well, absolutely, there's that. But I think a bigger part of Fitz is that he has given up on knowing his children and being part of the Farseer world for 15 years.
Because he doesn't want to be used anymore.
He doesn't want to be used, and I don't think that that's in question at all, but I do think that there are aspects that he misses, and I think as a grown-up, he can look back and understand that not every single thing was him being used necessarily, and like, I think there's like a grown-up way to look at some of the things that have happened to him that like make him realize that there was a way for him to stay at Buckkeep and in both of his children's lives, honestly, and not be quote unquote used. And just, I mean, he'd have to be part of politics, which he doesn't like, but there was a way for him to do it. And I think to me, this reads as sort of a feeble excuse because he doesn't want to face that and see what he actually gave up. Because there's one thing to like think about what could have been, and there's another thing to come face to face with what you actually missed. And so I sort of read this as like it's not a selfish reason that I'm not going.
Kind of a cowardice on his
little,
end.
yeah. But I think it's not because I'm selfish. It's because I'm being a good person, and I'm not saying he's not, and that's not a real reason not to go. I just don't think that's all of it.
So they don't speak anymore of skilling, but they catch up on all the people that Fitz once knew. Blade, that soldier, is now a grandfather. Hans was a stable master at Buckkeep. Lacey has aching in her joints, so she can no longer tat endlessly, which is sad. But Hans, as the stable master of Buckkeep, had married someone from the inland duchies from Pharaoh, and they have kids. They're all red hair. And she is bothering him to move back inland, so that's why Chade approached Beric for the stable master position. And there's all of these different things about those people, and then they talk about what Fitz is up to and all of his dyes, and he walks around his place and shows him all the little things that he's doing, and Chade is very pleased with Fitz and his experiments on dyes and said, well, some of these are probably better than what we can bring you. That's great. And Fitz is all happy because he gets some praise from his old mentor.
Yes, the same sort of praise he used to get when he mixed a good poison.
Mm-hmm. I brought you inks from Buckkeep, but now I wonder if your own are not the better. He patted my shoulder, just as he once had when I mixed a poison correctly. I showed him far more probably than I intended. When he looked at my herb beds, he no doubt marked the preponderance of sedatives and painkillers among my drug plants. When I showed him my bench on the cliffs overlooking the sea, he even said quietly, yes, Verity would have liked this. But despite what he saw and guessed, he spoke no more of the skill. They stayed up late and learned the stone game. Fitz teaches him Kettle's stone game. And Nighteyes grew bored with our long talk and went hunting, and he sensed a bit of jealousy from the wolf, but resolved to settle it with him later. And they set the game aside and turned the talk to Chade himself and how he fared. And Chade even opened up a little bit about his youth before he got scarred and how he had led a gay life before his mishandling of a potion that had scarred him and made him so ashamed of his appearance. And he is kind of resuming the life now that he once led, enjoying dancing and private dinners with witty ladies.
Right. And
he's a player for sure.
He is absolutely a player, which we know.
Yep.
And doesn't he have 2 kids? Isn't that the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lant and what's her name?
I don't remember.
I forgot now. Anyway, two
Yes.
kids in the final trilogy.
2 different They're 2 different mothers.
Good old hypocrite Chade of like, oh, don't hide your bastards away from the Farseer. We might have use to them. Please keep my bastards safe. And
Do not ever tell the Farseer line they exist. Anyway. My gosh. Anyway, that's the only thing I could think of when he was talking about how now he's back in the dating scene, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really interesting too to think about.
One of his kids is with Laurel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting too to think about how Chade is just fundamentally a different person than Fitz is, because Fitz hates court life. Like, he loved going to town and running around with all the kids down there. He did not ever really enjoy any aspect of court, which maybe was because Regal was there, unclear. But he just ultimately wasn't somebody who enjoyed the schmoozing part of being a royal.
And he never was forced to do that really either,
Yeah.
right? As the bastard, he wasn't groomed to be a political person. He did go on diplomatic missions as a representative.
Yeah, and he went to
times.
other duchies and obviously met.
But he was young
people. Yeah.
before he, was claimed as a traitor and
murdered.
killed.
Yeah. So yeah, and not great. But I think that's really interesting to me and something that I think about a lot, because in Chade's mind, I think he truly can't understand why Fitz would willingly be here in seclusion, away from everything. Because
Chade was forced to be in seclusion.
Yeah, Chade was forced. And not only that, but even when he was in seclusion, he was still in everybody's business. He was still doing things. He was still pulling strings. He had a fake character he went out as. So I think he truly cannot understand Fitz from that angle, because to Chade, society and social life is everything. And he's just very extroverted and really likes hanging out with people and going to parties.
Pretty sure in the first trilogy, Chade describes himself as his youth as like Regal, possibly worse than Regal.
Yeah. So
in terms of opulence and partying and not doing anything.
So yeah, so I think it's really interesting to see him here really trying to goad Fitz back in and very clearly not understanding the solitude of it all, the want for that solitude to get away from this. So, I mean, obviously on some aspects he would understand. I just think on the whole, he doesn't understand and keeps pushing, because to him, what Fitz really needs is just to be around more people.
Right.
A true extrovert thought.
Fitz is glad for him and spoke mostly in jest when he asked, "But how then do you fit in your quiet work for the crown, with all those other assignations and entertainments?" His reply was frank. "I manage, and my current apprentice is proving both quick and adept. The time will not be long before I can set those old tasks completely into younger hands." I knew an unsettling moment of jealousy that he had taken another in my place. An instant later, I recognized how foolish that was. The Farseers would ever have a need of a man capable of quietly dispensing the king's justice. I declared I would no longer be a royal assassin. That did not mean the need for one had disappeared. I tried to recover my aplomb. "Then the old experiments and lessons still continue in the tower?" He nodded once, gravely. "They do." As a matter of fact, and then he rises from the chair, and out of long habit reawakened, we had resumed our old postures, him sitting in a chair before the fire and me on the hearth by his feet. And only then did Fitz realize, that's kind of odd. I'm 35 years old in my own house. Why am I sitting on the hearth right in front of this old man?
Yeah, actually, this is my house, so. But he doesn't move.
But the apprentice is Rose, right? Rosemary?
Yes, that's right.
From the little girl who Regal had taken in first.
Yes, and that's a whole thing, because Fitz is really mad that Rosemary is the apprentice later.
But also he assumes it's a man. It has to be a man.
Also that, because, which is really funny, because Buckkeep society is very, pretty equal gendered in that way, because I mean, we saw when Fitz was scaling out earlier, he senses a captain and her thoughts about her daughter.
Yeah.
And so that's so funny to me that like in their society, there is unlike Bingtown we just got out of, there is that sort of equal balance between
But
men and women positions.
this dishonorable work
Yes.
has to be the work of a
woman would
man in
never.
Fitz's eyes, you know?
Yeah. So I
He's
thought
ashamed of it.
yeah. So I thought that was like a funny thing for him to assume.
So Chade gets up and rummages through his saddlebags, and he brings out a stained flask of hard leather. I brought this to show you, and then in all of our talk, I nearly forgot it. You recall my fascination with unnatural fires and smokes and the like? I rolled my eyes. His fascination had scorched us both more than once. And then he refuses the last time he thought he had witnessed that experiment, and that's when the candles turned blue during Buckkeep, when
Regal crowned himself king.
Yes.
And King Shrew died.
King Shrew died, and he ran through the halls and killed.
And was arrested.
Yes. So if Chade made that connection, he gave no sign of it. He returned eagerly to the fireside with his flask. Have you a twist of paper? I didn't bring any. So he pours some of this powder into a twist of paper, twists it up, and throws it into the fire, and nothing happens. The paper turned brown, caught fire, and burned. There's a slight stink of sulfur, and that was all. And Chade is properly flustered and very upset and tries a bigger twist, and again, does nothing. You'll think I've lost my touch, he declared. Oh, never that, I responded, but it was hard to keep the mirth from my voice. This time, the paper he prepared was more like a fat tube, and powder leaked from it as he twisted it closed. I stood up and retreated from the fireplace as he set it on the flames. But as before, it only burned. He gave a great snort of disgust. He peered down the dark neck of the small flask, then shook it. With an exclamation of disgust, he stoppered it. Damp got into it somehow. Well, that spoiled my show. He tossed the flask onto the fire, a mark of high dudgeon for Chade. As I sat back down by the hearth, I sensed the keenness of his disappointment and felt a touch of pity for the old man. I tried to take the sting from it. Then he kind of remarks on an old time where Fitz had messed up and...
Yes, Fitz had switched the powders and it burned everybody's eyes.
And then Chade leans forwards. Fitz, I never deceived you, did I? I was fair. I told you what I was teaching you from the very beginning. I saw then the lump of the scar between us. I put my hand up to cover his. His knuckles were bony, his skin gone papery thin. I looked back into the flames as I spoke to him. You were always honest with me, Chade. If anyone deceived me, it was myself. We each served our king and did what we must in that cause. I won't come back to Buckkeep, but it's not because of anything you did, but only because of who I've become. I bear you no ill will for anything. I turned to look up at him. His face was very grave, and I saw in his eyes what he had not said to me. He missed me. His asking me to return to Buckkeep was as much for himself as for any other reason. I discovered then a small share of healing and peace. I was still loved, by Chade at least. It moved me, and I felt my throat tighten with it. I tried to find lighter words. You never claimed that being your apprentice would give me a calm, safe life. Then there's a giant flash in the fireplace that explodes, and we'll get to that. But
yes.
Fitz's remark here in his head that I was still loved by Chade at least is just so Fitz. And this is not his forging or anything. This is something that he's struggled with all of his life and continues to struggle with even in the last trilogy, is that he believes that people only love him for a time.
Yeah.
That if they even do love him, it's only for their convenience for a little bit of period of time, and when he's gone, it doesn't exist anymore. And he keeps himself from that love. That's why the whole thing with the Fool is like without reservations, without boundaries, because the Fool's trying to beat it through Fitz's thick skull that, yeah, you can be loved without any reservations, and people can do that.
Yes.
And Fitz never really believes it.
No. And it's really sad to see, especially first chapter, thanks Rob and Hobb.
Yeah, I know.
That we have this man who obviously cares so much about Fitz. I think, yes, Chade isn't the best. Once again, we have this theme of not very great guardians, but
Does the best with what you're given and what you know.
Yes, yeah. And in Chade's way, he does love Fitz.
Mm-hmm.
He cares about Fitz and wants him to be okay. And I think if he didn't, he wouldn't have left Fitz alone for this long.
Right.
He wouldn't care. He wouldn't be sending money. It wouldn't matter. And no, money does not equal love. But I think it is a way for Chade to be able to show that love. And I think that's part of it. And I think that it's really sad to me that Fitz never truly gets over this sort of feeling of nobody actually loves me. They just love aspects of me. And when those aspects are gone, they don't love me anymore.
Yeah.
And
he just holds himself back from all of those relationships.
Yeah. Poor guy.
Mm-hmm.
Poor baby Fitz.
Poor baby Fitz. But he's looking at Chade when he says this,
thankfully.
So he's not blinded when the whole container of powder that Chade flows in there explodes, because he's basically trying to make gunpowder.
Yes.
Of some sort.
And it's a very loud bang. There are sparks everywhere. And Nighteyes slams through the doors, scrabbling on the hard wood, trying to make sure everything's okay. And Fitz has to...
He realizes he's yelling because he can't hear very well. He's like, I'm fine. And Nighteyes snorts in disgust at the smell and goes back outside.
Yes. So, but it's really interesting. And I think that moment really made me realize there's not so much Nighteyes in Fitz anymore. I mean, they talk to each other and they reach out to each other sometimes. But if they're not actively talking to each other or actively reaching out, Fitz is really himself. There's not really unwanted intrusions, which I feel like there was a little bit more of when they were younger.
I think the year with Black Rolf really kind of solidified their roles. I mean, they're probably closer than Black Rolf ever would want, but at least they're able to be themselves.
Yes.
Now.
And I think that's really clear, especially in this moment where he comes running in. There wasn't any knowledge of what was going on while it was happening. There wasn't, he had to come check with his eyes. It was... Yeah, so I found that to be a really interesting detail.
Fitz says it takes him some time to restore order because all these sparks and coals and a bunch of soot falls from the chimney that needed to be cleaned out before, and they need to stamp out all these sparks around the house and clean up a bit. And finally, when they're resettled with some more brandy, Fitz is like, was that what the powder was supposed to do?
Yeah, like, was that the intended purpose?
No, L's balls, boy. Do you think I'd deliberately do that in your hearth? What I'd been producing was a sudden flash of white light, almost blinding. The powder shouldn't have done that. Still, I wonder why it did. What was different? Damn, I wish I could remember what I had last stored in that flask. He knit his brows and stared fiercely into the flames, and I knew his new apprentice would be put to puzzling out just what had caused that blast. I did not envy him the series of experiments that would undoubtedly follow. He spends the night.
Yes. And the night is nice and peaceful, and Chade gets Fitz's bed. Fitz uses Hap's bed. But in the morning, it's sort of awkward.
Yeah, they know that the visit is at the end. There's nothing else to talk about, really.
Yes.
Because there's no other catching up, and there's no further tasks that needs them together.
Yes. So yesterday was the catching up and the, camaraderie and the bonding over what was and all the things that have happened to them and how things have been since. And today is sort of that awkward goodbye. It's the leaving and not knowing if or when they'll see each other again.
A sort of bleakness rose in me. Why should I ask after folk I'd never see again? Why should he tell me of the current crop of political intrigues when they had no touch on my life at all? For one long afternoon and evening our lives had meshed again, but now as the gray day dawned, he watched me go about my homely tasks, drawing water and throwing feed to my poultry, cooking breakfast for us and washing up the crockery. We seemed to grow more distant with every awkward silence. Almost I began to wish he had not come.
To be fair, I think that's also in Fitz's mind. I don't think they're growing distant. I think Chade is just sort of observing and wondering why this is the life that he's choosing over coming back.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I agree with that. After breakfast, he said he must be on his way, and I did not try to dissuade him. I promised him he should have the game scroll when it was finished. I gave him several vellums I had written on dosages for sedative teas, and some roots for starts of the few herbs in my garden that he did not already know. I gave him several vials of different colored ink. The closest he came to trying to change my mind was when he observed that there was a better market for such things in Buckkeep. I only nodded and said I might send Hap there sometimes. Saddles up the horse and says goodbye.
And as he's watching Chade leave, Nighteyes says, "You regret this?" "I regret many things, but I know that if I went with him and did as he wishes, I would eventually regret that much more." Yet I could not move from where I stood, staring after him. It wasn't too late, I tempted myself. One shout and he'd turn and come back, and I clenched my jaws. Nighteyes slipped my hand with his nose. "Come on, let's go hunting. No boy, no bows, just you and I." "Sounds good," I heard myself say. And so Nighteyes is able to distract Fitz and to lead him away from that longing to go back with Chade.
Mm-hmm.
And they do end up catching a rabbit.
Yeah.
And Fitz is pleasantly surprised, and he realizes he's not that old.
Not yet.
Not yet. Age hasn't hit him yet. And
he realizes that he, not just Hap, needs to get out and learn new things and do new things.
Yeah. But his response to that is then to think, I think Nighteyes and I need to go on an adventure again.
Yeah.
And so he asks Nighteyes, do you want to go on an adventure with me? And Nighteyes asks where, and he says, we could go to the mountains, back to that city, the Elderling city.
Nighteyes guesses that.
Oh, yes,
like,
you're right.
What if we both went afoot? If you must, he conceded grudgingly. You're thinking about that place back in the mountains, aren't you? The ancient city, yes. Will we be taking the boy? I think we'll leave Hap here to do for himself for a bit. It might be good for him, and someone has to look after the chickens. So I suppose we won't be leaving until the boy comes back. I nodded to that. Wondered if he'd completely taken leave of his senses.
So, just a quick aside. Hap is 14 years old. Why would you leave him in charge of a home and chickens and everything
it's
else?
The Six Duchies. Learn some responsibility for himself, but also just send him off to an apprenticeship.
Yes.
If you're going to go.
That's what I'm saying. Well, first of all, yes, but also you cannot leave a 14-year-old at home for months-long periods.
Not
so
in
you can go
2025, but if he's already doing all the chores in Six Dutch time.
Fantasy Buckkeep, I guess it's fine. But it just, I'm mad. You can't leave.
He doesn't do it.
No, but not because he doesn't want to. It's because
Right.
other stuff comes up. It just, whatever.
I want to talk about Fitz's attitude when he comes to this decision that they have to go on an adventure.
Yes.
Because this is the end of the chapter here, but this last thing is, that had always been Patience's cure for boredom. Learn something new. Do something new. And he looks around the cottage and finds it kind of suffocating. All of the thoughts that Chade brings in with him, the stories of other people in his life, realizes that he's fallen into a routine for the past 3 or 4 years of doing nothing. He barely leaves his cottage. He used to go to the market to sell some of the stuff with the village nearby, but now Hap does it. He doesn't really do anything.
Right.
He's a homebody. And he feels like he's not doing anything anymore and now is just getting a little bit itchy to just there's more out there than just this.
Right. Which, I don't know. I hate that his reaction to this is guess that means I need to go on a solo adventure with my dog. We're just going to go backpacking and it'll be great. And we'll camp and have a good old time. Instead of, maybe I need to open up my world a little bit more. Maybe I need to get out of these routines and be part of the community and maybe move to a town instead of being out here in the middle of nowhere, or just be part of town, go to town more often, find Hap his apprenticeship. No, it's let's run away again. And ultimately it is running away because there's that comment at the end about him thinking about what the town leads to, what the Elderling city leads to as well, which obviously is the stone dragons. And so there's sort of, in my mind, that little thing in the back of his mind of oh, we'll go there and then I'm going to carve myself into a dragon and not have to worry about any of this anymore.
There's also the responses from Nighteyes I want to talk about because Nighteyes is a big character in this trilogy.
Yes.
So Fitz says, well, Nighteyes asks, so what do you want to do? And he stretches and yawns in resignation. And Fitz says, I don't know. Something different. How would you feel about wandering the world for a bit? For a time, he retreated into that part of his mind that was his alone. Then he asked, somewhat testily, would we both be afoot, or do you expect me to keep pace with a horse all day? That's a fair question. If we both went afoot? If you must, he conceded grudgingly. And then he said, you're thinking about that place in the mountains.
Yeah.
So I think Nighteyes is like, I'm old. Like,
Right.
Fitz, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that you feel you need to do, and I'll do it because you're my partner. But like, man,
Yeah.
I know you're longing for this kind of thing, and maybe this is something I can do for you in the last years of both of our lives as accompanying you here.
Uh-huh.
But that's it.
Right. And I think
Nighteyes has settled down. He's like, we're in a cool place here.
yeah, he's like, why
I get
are
to go
we
hunting with a
changing?
boy. He does most of the work. I get fish. I get spice cakes from this old man who comes once in a while.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I think there's definitely that reservation from Nighteyes. And it's probably not just about not wanting to leave the comfort. It's also his age that he's thinking
It's
about.
his age.
And
It's Fitz's well-being too, I think, because of that longing, and that how immediately Nighteyes is like, you're thinking about that city.
yeah.
You're thinking about all the things that we did back then because of these memories and the skill.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it sort of a animal instinct to hide away if you think you're going to die soon? To like,
Kind of, yeah.
like there's that. So I think
Yeah.
it's like common in dogs.
Yeah, but
maybe
that's more
cats.
like directly when you're about to die.
Well,
I think,
yeah, but I'm just
know,
thinking of like maybe.
I think Nighteyes has like a few more years.
Oh no, I'm not saying Nighteyes. I'm saying Nighteyes recognizes that Fitz is like really struggling with this
Oh,
thing,
Gotcha.
and so maybe he's recognizing this as Fitz getting away from the boy because of like he wants to go away now, and like, ugh, well, I guess we'll go to your resting place.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Sort
maybe.
of deal. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just looking at me have an outlandish theory. I would never do that.
End of chapter 1.
Woo.
Chade Fallstar. Oh, we're back with Fitz.
Yeah. So I guess we got to ask the question.
Is Fitz happy?
No, clearly not.
Oh, come on. He's the happiest he's ever been in his life. Barring the dungeon, of course, that cozy little home that he had.
Yes. Ugh.
No, yeah, he is clearly not happy. But at the beginning, he would have said that he was content with his life.
What was he? Because we saw in the beginning, I don't think he even was content then. I think he just
a
had nowhere
routine.
to hide
Yeah.
with that routine so thoroughly disrupted.
I think he had happy moments.
I think he definitely had happy moments.
I don't think he's miserable 24/7.
No. But I think it's very clear that he's not as happy as he could be.
Right. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. We have more Fitz ahead. Lots of years of Fitz left. So please let us know what you think of this chapter of this book, what you're looking forward to. We are at isfitzhappy@gmail.com, or you can message us directly or comment on any of our social media posts. Isfitzhappy at Facebook, Instagram, on Reddit, Blue Sky, and Threads.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that I missed?
I don't think so.
Awesome. You can go to our website, isfitzhappy.com, or isfitzhappy.podbean.com if you need to find links to any of those.
We look forward to hearing from you. All right. Back to our favorite part of the podcast.
Yeah.
We get to talk about what you guys have brought to us. But before we do,
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out to somebody who supported us on Ko-fi. So thank you very, very much. Oh, man. J. Raluark. It's kind of a string of letters, so I'm not sure what part of that is your name. But thank you so much for the support. We really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for everyone who has shown support, whether that's vocal or monetarily or just playing our stuff.
yeah, we always appreciate the support you all show us.
Mm-hmm. Ah, man, it's been a while. We
Yeah.
took a little break ourselves.
Yeah. And we're back. and we get to talk about Fitz again finally.
A lot has happened.
Yeah.
A lot has happened.
Yeah, I
My
definitely...
birthday happened.
That's true. You're an old man now.
I'm an old man now. I've been an old man, according to you, for 8 years.
Yeah, almost 9.
But a lot has happened to Fitz in the meantime, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to most in the trilogy? Or in this book, I guess?
Oh, I'm looking forward to Fitz and Fool being reunited.
Yeah, that whole conversation in the
Yes.
cabin.
And I'm really excited about Thick.
Yeah.
I really like Thick as a character, and I'm excited to be reunited with Thick as a rereader.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I am... Man, it feels awful to say, but I am very excited about the Nighteyes parts in this book. Because, I don't know, he seems very mature and ready to go when it happens, and that scene is so beautifully written. It's heartbreaking, but...
I'm not ready for that. That's not this book, though.
I think it is, isn't it?
No, for sure not. I hope. I hope not. We have to get at least one full Nighteyes book. Hobb, if you do this to me, I quit. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we do have a couple things to clean up from last trilogy, from the live ships.
Yes, and I kind of foresee the next couple episodes probably touching on the live ship trilogy every once in a while. And I mean, obviously, as we go forward, people who haven't caught up will potentially write in. So
just like we spoke about, the Farseer trilogy.
Exactly. It just always feels weird when you're in a new trilogy and you hear stuff from the old one. But as this is the first episode of the new trilogy, no one has heard it, and therefore there is no questions about Fitz or theories.
True.
So we do have to go back in time.
Mm-hmm. And I'll first start off with a message on Facebook from Hedwig, who says, listening to episode 248, and I just misheard you guys say Brashen miscommunication as Brashenist communication. I think we should make it a thing.
I agree.
What would that describe, though?
Whenever you make assumptions and don't communicate.
So just like lack of communication is brashness. Jump to conclusion.
Brashness communication to me is whenever you make up a scenario in your mind.
That's the worst case.
Worst case scenario, and you start talking to people as though worst case has already happened.
But you're like playing it cool.
Yeah, but you're trying to play it cool. So you're not, it's the whole, I know this is going bad and I know what's happening. I'm not going to ask for any clarification. I know in my heart that it's the worst case scenario, but I'm going to pretend like I'm chill with everything dying in front of me.
So Fitz had some brashness communication to himself there, convincing like Hap has to go, but like I'm fine.
Oh, yeah. So thank you, Hedwig, for that suggestion. I think it's funny. And then we also got a really interesting email from listener Katie, who wrote in and is talking about their struggle with trying to decide if they should skip Ship of Magic, the Ship of Magic trilogy, I guess. Or I guess it'd be the Live Ship Trader trilogies. But
yeah. Really enjoyed the Farseer trilogy. Finished Assassin's Quest a few months ago and has Ship of Magic in storage, but just like really wants to move on with Fitz. Yeah. And as it's the first of this book, the first chapter, I feel like it's kind of apt to talk about it.
Yeah.
I am a big proponent of reading in publication order for any series.
Yes, you are.
Whether it's published out of order or whatever. Just like, like Narnia. Don't start with Magician's Nephew. Start with Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. And,
technically, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is not the first one.
Yeah, exactly. Magician's Nephew was the prequel. But...
Oh, wait. Okay, so you think that should be read last?
Went publication order, I think. Not chronological.
Oh, okay. I understand now what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think authors write the stories that they have in mind and write the stories next that make sense to them.
Ooh, okay.
So I think publication order is always the best in every single case, unless the author themselves say, no, read it in this order.
Okay, interesting. See, I'm more of a fan of...
chronological?
Well, not even necessarily that. I think I fundamentally believe once an artist or writer or whoever has made a thing and has put it out into the universe
Death
for others.
Of the author.
yeah, I believe in death of the author, that they no longer have control over how I perceive it, and it doesn't matter their intention. Although, I mean,
True.
I guess, okay, some intentions matter. But, I mean, like, however you want to go at that media, that's your prerogative.
See, I'm not the artist, though. I am a fan telling another fan to be like, no, don't skip it. It's important.
That's fair. I don't know. I just...
The only thing I'll say is that, well, the only thing, I've been talking this whole time. The last thing I'll say on this is, if you will not finish the other books, if you will not continue reading because you choose to do something that's in order, keep reading what makes you interested.
Right.
However, it is published and written in an order that reveals surprises in order. So that's my thoughts on it.
That's fair. I think I am ultimately glad that I read this series in publication order.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was worth it, and it was good.
I had to bully you into it, though.
You did have to bully me into it. I did not want to. I wanted to go straight to Fitz.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a reward to it. So, like, I don't know. I think it works out.
Yeah.
I just don't believe there's a wrong way to go about things, though. I'm pretty loosey-goosey about stuff like that. I think as long as you're having fun, like you said, if it's going to make you not want to finish it, don't do it. But also, I don't know. Sometimes you do need the break and you didn't realize it because you do love Fitz, but I don't know if I would still like Fitz if I skipped the Rain Wild. You know what I mean?
If you had a full 9 books with him.
Yeah. Like,
I think every 3 books he ages up a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'd probably get really annoyed. Yeah. And there'd be so many questions unanswered that you learn about the magic system. So I don't know. I say do whatever you want to do, but also there is a reason, and that should be something that you weigh in your mind if you don't want to miss out. And I'm a big person of, I don't want FOMO, so I'm definitely gonna.
Yeah. Well, Katie, I'm glad that you enjoy listening to our podcast. I kind of hope you're not at this episode while we're discussing this because you haven't read Live Ship. So I hope you haven't read or listened to all the other Live Ships so you can experience it at some point.
Yes.
Fresh. But either way, appreciate you writing in, and maybe we'll actually respond to this email and give opinions on that.
Yeah.
That way, so she's not spoiled.
Yeah. And that's all for now.
Yeah.
So,
beginning of a book. Got lots to go. This is going to be a long episode, so you guys have a lot to listen to for the first week here.
I know. I'm really looking forward to seeing if we have very many 2-part episodes now that we're back with Fitz. I feel like we really didn't do that a lot for Trilogy.
I mean, this episode's definitely going to be right around 2 hours, so I could break it up, but it's the first one back.
Yeah. Always got to give you
a little special,
Who doesn't want to listen to 2 strangers talk for 2 hours? What else are you doing with your life?
I feel like Fitz's chapters they can be longer than the Live Ships were, but since we're with Fitz the whole time, there's less to catch up on, so it just goes a little bit smoother sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it does this. That's also something about the first chapter, though, too, is that we're coming back after having a trilogy with him and a trilogy away, where there is that sort of reminder of who everybody is and sort of touchstone on what has happened a little bit since we last saw him. So there's definitely going to be that for a few more chapters, just like there is in any series.
And we get new characters coming in. Jenna comes in soon. We'll get to meet Mayhap.
Yeah.
Or Mishap, excuse me.
Is Jenna this book?
I believe so. Again, I could be wrong, but I believe so.
I don't know. I feel like so much either so much happens this book or I'm misremembering, but it seems like such a small book. So there's all these things I think happen first book. Yeah. It doesn't feel like there's enough book for it to all have happened to this book. So I'm really curious how good my memory is.
So I'm pretty sure. Oh, maybe Jenna is the second. Well, we'll see.
We'll find out.
See. It's been so long since we've read them. It'll be fun. All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah. See you next week.